So we're going to do kind of like part 3 of fatigue or adrenal fatigue. We kind of recovered some of the theory, little things we might have overlooked last time. Today, we're going to make sure we all understand all the herbs of fatigue and adrenal fatigue. Okay. One point that I wanted to make that is important, and this is a point more where I see patients struggle, because, you know, every day someone comes to my office with thyroid disease and fatigue and is being treated, and their thyroid numbers are perfect, and they still feel all the symptoms that they have, right? Or someone has low testosterone and they're getting testosterone and their labs are perfect and they still feel all the same degree of not good. Or women who are taking estrogen and maybe even though their hot flashes have went away, none of their other symptoms really have. So when people are having chronic thyroid problems and testosterone and estrogen and progesterone and hormone and fatigue, and they're on medications and their labs are all great, should that confuse us at all? It should not, because this is just kind of how Western medicine is with this. The reason for this is we're really talking about like an entire endocrine system, right? A lot of herbalists and natural medicine people have proposed this beautiful idea of your surface endocrine system, which would be things like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And then we have your deep endocrine system, which would be, you know, these are the things that are somewhat more challenging to change and more static. Your deep endocrine system is really adaptation. It's the part of your body that's adapting to everyday stress. So it's things that are affected by stress hormones, right? Like cortisol and all kinds of other glandular secretions. And, you know, DHEA and things that can literally, you know, change by the hour when we do testing or saliva testing, right? Because and this is where Western medicine is showing its weak area. Remember, Western medicine is very isolated. Everything is in a box. So your thyroid's in a box, and your adrenals are in a box, and your ovaries and your uterus, right? Your hypothalamus and your pituitary. But the body is not in a box, right? The body is a huge endocrine. In fact, a lot of healers, a lot of practitioners just call this the endocrine soup. It's really just a big soup, a series of soup-like experience that's in your body. And these are all interacting and they're all interfacing, right? So your adrenals, your ovaries, the testicles, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, which is the master gland, right? Pituitary, your thyroid, right? All of these things, plus all kinds of other smaller glands, your pineal gland, are all really interacting and interfacing. Remember when we studied the adrenals the first time? What do we call this? Remember, what's the abbreviation? The hypothalamus pituitary adrenal thyroid axis. HPAT axis. It's just a word, just a fancy research word for saying it's just a darn soup. That's what it is. So even though we can take a medication and our estrogen is fine now, we're having all these symptoms because the soup is off, period. It's just off. So this is where natural medicine really excels. And we use this word adrenal a lot. And I kind of have a little bit of a challenge with it because it's not like completely accurate, but to me, it's like a word that Westerners understand that points the way. But it's not completely accurate to just say it's all your adrenals, but that's an easy way to talk about it. So when people have all these hormonal problems, but their hormones are great, their tests are great, and they're taking things, but they still feel the same, it's usually because this whole soup is off, the adrenals are off. We know why the adrenals are off. We talked about all that many times, right? Stress and emotions and sleep and fatigue and, bad sleeping habits and all these things. Diet and lifestyle. So, I mean, you can take as many hormones as you want, but you can't compensate for stress, diet, lifestyle, all these things. Okay. So about every day, at least one person comes to me with this. And it's really, to me, so simple once you see it like a couple hundred times. It's just, we're going to call it the adrenals. When we talked about the adrenals last year in Chinese medicine, we had a better, more comprehensive view of it, right? Just to review, since we're almost finishing up, right? I want to review all of our concepts just to make sure you all remember when we talked about the adrenals and energy and fatigue the first year, we use this term adrenals, but in Chinese medicine, what are we calling this? What's that? Okay, we have a lot of functions of what we would call the adrenals. This is why I don't necessarily like the term, but we use it. Number one, we have qi, or vital energy. That is part of your adrenals, right? We have, we talked about this, your jing, or spelled in Chinese, jing. Right? We have jing, which is your vital essence, the source of all the soup. Remember how we talked about if you have a candle, if we think of your energy or your adrenals as a candle, remember how big the candle is jing. Sometimes spelled C-H-I-N-G, just so it doesn't confuse anybody, jing. How much reservoir do you have? This is the ultimate thing we're trying to restore, right? What else, though? What other functions touched on the adrenals? Remember we talked about all the other kidney patterns? Remember we talked about kidney yin deficiency? That's a dry pattern, right? Dry. You have dry mouth, dry throat, sweats, night sweats, hot at night, fatigued, right? Dry joints and dry skin and dry hair and vaginal dryness and lack of libido and, right? All these things. And remember when we talked about kidney yang deficiency, this would be more the heat, right? Lacking that vital substance of yang or activity, right? Extreme fatigue, extreme depression, a lot of coldness and always cold, right? Very depressed. What other things could also be part of these adrenal patterns, just to remind you. That were Chinese terms we talked about. You guys shouldn't remember all this. Remember? The blood also, very important, right? So blood deficiencies. Anemia would be an extreme version of this. But all of these are different patterns that could manifest to create this thing called adrenals in America. That's why I don't really like the American term for it, but it is like it's a decent term though. Because in Chinese medicine, we really delineate it this way out. So really more specific. And the average American could have all of these could be weak, right? Maybe not just one, maybe all of them. That's possible. So that's 2 years of everything we've learned, right? Everybody's okay with this for review? Comfortable with this? Confusion, questions? No, I want to make sure you really get this concept because this is like one of the number one questions you're going to get asked and people want help with. And they're going to say exactly this. Yeah, I have low thyroid, I have Hashimoto's, I have fatigue, I don't think my medication's doing anything, but my labs are totally fine. Right? So a lot of times in functional medicine, I get kind of turned off by it because a lot of times the doctors will, even though people's labs are fine, they'll start really upping their hormones because they want to get a response, even though their hormones are fine. And that's not always like super safe or good either, but that's often, unfortunately, what happens in functional medicine in America today. People try to do like super doses of hormones even when their labs are really good. And that's like not a very good strategy in my mind. Because this is still like the root of all of it, right? Everybody's okay with this? I want to make sure everybody's okay with this. Dialogue with me here. What questions do you have about it? In all your notes, we've talked about what are the symptoms of all these things, right? In the past, you should be able to go back to those. Yeah, the biggest concern was the Jing one, right? Because that was like somewhat set by the health of your parents and grandparents, right? This is like an inherited trait. We can still change it, but it's somewhat not fair to a lot of us because we might have really bad genetics or family health issues or bad habits that have been passed on through generations. Remember, a lot of how stressed mom was during pregnancy can determine a lot of this too, or how healthy mom's diet is or stress or lifestyle. So that's why in Chinese medicine, we really value the pre-conception phase. Remember, we talked about if people are going to have a baby, we want them to do these things to address these issues a year in advance. And I think it's hard to convince a lot of Americans that because they don't know the theory, but it's really like just, it's actually changing the health trajectory of your baby before it's even made.
So is there a connection between children who have ADHD, ADD, and stress on the mom during pregnancy?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, clinically, yeah. I don't know how many studies have shown that, but definitely. Mm-hmm. Or other thousands of stresses, like we've learned so much about class, right? There's over 10,000 chemical compounds used in America, all affecting mom, baby, all of us, you know, pollutants, polluted water, food, you know, it just goes on and on and on. So it's, yeah, not just the stress, it's just all these things bombarded with, right? But again, instead of getting depressed about it, which is super easy to do, like it's really easy to do, the more you research the state of our environment and world, this is the solution though. That's why I always keep really ringing this in of all of you, because if you're going to go home with one like pound your chest, like empowering idea, this is one of them I want it to be. that no matter how much challenge you're faced with, the way we're going to deal with all of the future craziness is just through this combined with what other technique we have. Detox, right? We're going to do a lot of rebuilding. We're going to do a lot of detox, and that's our best bet at helping our bodies, our family, our future generations adapt to all these stresses our bodies are put under, physically and emotionally, right? Everybody gets this because this is like so important, right? It's so hard to convince people that want to have a baby or that miscarriage right away to wait like a year before they try again, because a miscarriage really affects this a lot, unfortunately. So it's often hard to convince people to wait a little bit before they try to conceive after like a miscarriage or something. So, yeah.
Are you see people like this if they're thinking about having kids and stuff like that? So you've got maybe the herbs down that you want to prescribe, but what about like saying you need to stay away from all seed oils? And I mean, do you give them like,
yeah, try to do as much as you can, or meet them somewhere and try to get them to do a couple things every time you talk to them, at least, right? A couple positive traits without totally like overwhelming people, because it's kind of overwhelming when you look at how many things we should all be doing ideally for these things. But yeah, I would try to get them to move in a direction. Remember we talked about that idea, it's a Tai Chi idea, just improve your position. That's all we're trying to do, right? We're not trying to fly into the sky. We're just improve your position no matter where you're at. Or if you're a practitioner, right, it's sharpen your sword every day, sharpen your sword a little bit more, get a little bit better at something, or get a little bit better at being healthy or less stressed or something. So we're just trying to get people to go up a couple notches, right? That's going to be often enough. So I think that's why a lot of people like working with me, because I'm not like super extreme. I don't expect people to live like they're in a mountain monastery, because I can't. So I mean, I don't expect anybody else to. I follow the rule that I would never ask somebody to do something that I can't do myself. Never have asked somebody to do that. And if I couldn't do it, I'll just tell someone I couldn't do that, but maybe you can. So it's a good rule to follow as a practitioner. Never ask somebody to do something you can't do yourself. Or if you're helping somebody, right? Just remember that. Okay. Just to review, everybody's okay with this big picture. You have bad genetics. Here's your equation, right? Right? A little bit of cleansing, a little bit of this. Those are our two basic. If you can remember anything from this class, it's the three therapies, right? Tonification, rejuvenating, and detox. Those are the two opposites. Those are like the greatest strength of natural medicine. The third is just maintenance, which is a little bit of both, right? So when we're talking about these soups, these are the things that we're having to help people with. I guarantee you, if all of you opened your practice tomorrow, the first day or first week, you're going to get this. You're going to get this again and again, at least once a day. This exact situation again every day, right? Fibromyalgia is pretty similar to all this, and chronic fatigue, and why people suffer from Lyme's disease and some don't as much. Right? Why people have a bad time with COVID or not. It's all plugged into this equation most of the time, a lot of it. So everybody's got this. This is why I always say the saying is that the more boring your life is, the more healthy you are. Does that make sense? Let me say it again. The more boring your life is, the more healthy it is, from the sense of like eating healthy can be really boring. Like getting a lot of sleep can be really boring. Not having a lot of stress or drama in your life can be really boring. Working out every day can be boring, especially things like meditation and Tai Chi can be kind of boring to people. So I mean that as a joke kind of, but like the more boring you can get your life, in a sense, usually the more healthier you are. Yeah. So my biggest concern with like for the young generation, like my kids' age, is that that boringness is really getting boring to them. You know, like there's such a high threshold for stimulation and interest now. I'm really afraid that I don't know. People even want to do yoga and Tai Chi and meditate, this young generation. So, but this is also why in Chinese medicine and things and in Ayurvedic medicine, they've always valued things like yoga and meditation and stretching, because those things are treating this, right? And yoga and Tai Chi are also detoxifying. They're made to detoxify the body too. Remember, every twist and turn, you're squeezing your lymph and helping to mobilize toxins out of all your deep tissues and everywhere. So all these techniques have a lot of hidden applications that we forget about. We just think they're boring, right? I have this conversation with myself a lot. Like, I should go do Tai Chi. Kind of sounds boring. I'd rather watch the new season of Witcher that just dropped, you know, like play Zelda. What am I going to do here? So you just have to kind of joke about it a little bit yourself, right? Your friends will often say, "Oh, you're so boring." Be like, "I know, I try. I try really hard to be boring." Okay. So with the adrenals, everybody's okay with this. The term adrenals, I just want everybody to remember, is kind of like a term we use in the West and in natural medicine and in functional medicine, but it's not like a super accurate term because we're really talking about all this. Where I get really like kind of like concerned with functional medicine is that it doesn't have this background. So they often just throw a bunch of supplements that don't actually affect these things. That's where I get concerned, right? So, you know, if you're doing some kind of process like, you know, NAC or quercetin or just a lot of processed supplements that may have health benefits, they're not doing this though. That's my concern. That's like, they may have like a good medical function, but because herbs have such complex chemistry in that, they do often do this also. So one of my huge concerns is just this change in natural medicine to get really turn into Western medicine of using like isolated natural drugs, basically. So where I'm really a big fan of holistic approaches with like the whole plant. Yeah.
I'd like to argue with you about
Sure.
idea that you would ask somebody to do something for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I ask some people occasionally, but I'll just say I can't do that myself, but it would be good if you could.
Because that makes me think of Michael Jordan, basketball coach, who couldn't do what he did.
Yeah. Sure.
Right.
Phil? Oh, Phil? Yeah. Phil's kind of master guy.
But if,
Yeah.
I think that your knowledge would make up for the fact that you might not be able to do it. You should still ask it of people because you know it.
Yeah.
That expertise would maybe counteract the fact that you might not be able to do it yourself. And you should ask them to do it, not because
Yeah. So maybe what I should say better, I agree with you totally, that I like to be like really honest with people and don't want people to think like I'm perfect or something. So I'll just say, yeah, a disclaimer, like I cannot do like I can't do a perfect keto diet because I get grouchy. I just can't do it. I'll admit it doesn't work for me. Intermittent fasting, I get grouchy and irritable. It just doesn't work for me. So, but I recommend it a lot. I just tell people though I can't, I can't personally do it, get grouchy. So yeah, doesn't work for me. Yeah. 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 So see, there's a trend right now in America that I get, like the hacking trend, right? Everybody has a health hack, a life hack, right? We have the 4-hour work week, the 4-hour body, the 4-hour everything, right? But what that is like a really reductionist idea. And sometimes there are, to me, that just says Americans are really busy and we can't commit to like a whole program. So we want like little hacks of information. And a lot of those hacks are very true and very helpful. But to me, you know, this is like a little bit more complex than just a hack, right? You're not going to hack your adrenals. Even if you just do sleep or like cold water therapy, is probably really good for the adrenals and all these things that are really popular right now and healthy. But we've got to have like a real holistic view of like kind of diet, lifestyle, everything, stress management. I looked this one guy in the face today and like 3 times he asked me, I finally got what he was saying. He's like, so stress can cause autoimmune disorders. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. It's like stress. Okay. Then thought he was like, I didn't know what he was getting at first, but he was like processing it like, oh, I never really knew that. So, because he was talking about like curing himself and all that, which is really cool, and his daughter. But I was trying to explain that even if you cured your autoimmune disease, you could at any time have chronic stress and fall into a bad eating lifestyle or have a trauma or car accident, and it could trigger your autoimmune problem to come back. So, you know, he was, having like a challenge with that because he was thinking it was all just like genetically determined and you just had it no matter what. And so he was going through a process. So, okay, so everybody's okay with this. I get really excited when I teach about this because it's like one of the greatest, if there is like a gift of Chinese, so we talked about this too, Chinese medicine, renowned for their rejuvenation tonification strategies, not renowned for detox at all. That's never been an emphasis. We could get into a huge discussion of why and have really cool conversation. No one really knows, it's just the way it is. Ayurvedic medicine is the opposite. Its strength is in all the detox protocols, like extensive detox. That's where all those Ayurvedic spa therapies come from, and massage and all of this. And Western herbal medicine and European herbal medicine and Greek herbal medicine all emphasizes detox. So this is why I love to combine East and West, because those are like two totally opposite things, right? So in Chinese medicine, there's no history of bitters because to them, it's all about your energy. Total different approach to digestion and all problems. Where in the Western tradition, it's more practical, like just, your liver needs support, your stomach, your intestines. So there's this, they're very different strengths, right? Different strengths and weaknesses. So that's why we spent so much time on cleansing and why we spent so much time on rejuvenation. But if you're ever feeling really, really bad and you feel stuck, like we said last week, and you can't physically heal, it's just not working, this is what you got to go back to. Look at yourself in the mirror, review what all of these symptoms are, and find out which one or all of them that apply to you. Start working your way to addressing them. This is like your blueprint. Okay. And for people that don't have fatigue, but just have other chronic diseases, like your immune system can't get over Lyme's or long haul COVID or hepatitis A, whatever it is, it's often because of this. So this is like a Chinese kind of blueprint historically of how they would address and look. And maybe it's just one thing for you, maybe it's all of them. Okay. All right.
So are we gonna go through specific, like, deficiency treatments, or have we already kind of gone through that?
We did that last year when we did the adrenals. We can do like a 1 minute adrenal. We can teach the adrenals right now this way if you want to challenge ourselves. That's a fun challenge for me. Okay. Okay. So everybody's okay with the philosophy. Remember, the other thing I want you to remember, if you get anything out of this course, is it's the herbs don't make the medicine. The theory and the system of medicine make the medicine. Meaning, don't just think you're going to give somebody an adrenal herb because they have adrenal problems. We want to really understand what's going on with someone and what are the appropriate herbs that fit into that constitutional pattern, right? This is how functional medicine, this is like my biggest challenge with it, is that it's just, you have adrenal problems, here's all your adrenal herbs, but there's not like a theory and a strategy. There might be like some good research that's really cool, but they don't have like a theory and strategy of how you would choose all those and what are the deeper problems. So this is like a really good guide. We'll just use this, we'll run with it. Okay. Remember, you can have like the most ancient, mystical, crazy Chinese formula, and it's only going to be amazing response for some people, right? There's no like magical formula, so to speak. Well, allegedly there is, but I have yet to track it down. And I'm still searching for it. I really am. I truly am. That's one of my secret hobbies. Allegedly, some people have had it throughout history in Europe and definitely in China and in India, probably the Middle East too, I'm sure. So, okay, we're going to teach it this way. Ready? This is going to be a good challenge. Okay, we're going to do this all in 1 hour. Okay. Full review. We have fatigue. We have adrenal fatigue. And there's a qi deficiency. First of all, what's that look like assessment-wise? We're going to call this symptoms, right? Yeah, fatigue is going to be really predominant. What's going to make this worse? Exertion or using energy is going to make this worse. You're more tired after work. You're more tired after you work out. You're more tired at the end of the day. You have more energy when you wake up, unless it's really bad, right? So energy is a huge thing because qi affects every organ. Everything's going to look a little bit off. So your stomach is going to be more weak. Your digestion's going to be weak, especially things where energy is weak, like diarrhea, food allergies, food reactions, because you don't have the energy to really break stuff down. Often people feel more tired after they eat because all your energy gets used for digestion and you have none left over. Does that make sense? Okay. The less you sleep, the worse this gets, right? So when you rest, this gets better. So obviously, like when people say, well, yeah, it's worse when I don't get a lot of sleep. Well, here you go. And remember, because qi, your energy, directly affects your immune function, one of the main symptoms we see with this in America is weak immunity. Weak immunity to us would mean allergies, seasonal allergies, food allergies, food intolerances, chronic infections, can't get over infections, people who get, the flu a couple times a year. I had a lady today, 6 times a year, she gets a flu-like experience. So this is the qi deficiency. How do we see this in the tongue? Remember? So the tongue will be probably in general more pale. Yep. It could have a whitish coat, thicker whitish coat. Like the whole tongue will kind of have like a little whitish coat. Not always, because a lot of medications might affect that. The main thing we're going to see is probably these scalloping tooth marks on the side. That's one of the definitive things with this type of deficiency. Okay. Eyes, I mean, nothing really jumps out with the eyes with this necessarily. The face will probably look just more pale and tired. Okay. But the tongue is really easy to spot. This particular one. Maybe it could just be at first the tongue will just be more swollen. If this is a regular tongue. First we get swelling, and then often we'll get like the tooth marks. Where people think it's their teeth, it's not your teeth pressing against, it's not your tongue pressing against your teeth. This is from your body, right? Yeah.
I was asking, in animals, they actually really bad where we see the scalloping.
It usually starts with just kind of puffy and pale and maybe whitish, and then it gets to like more dramatic. Yeah. More moist usually, yeah. Okay. What are the herbs we're going to use for qi deficiency with fatigue or adrenal fatigue? Yeah, what kind of ginseng? We're going to use Chinese ginseng, one of the strongest true adrenal qi tonics that we have. Just to review, we have Chinese red ginseng. What does that mean? What's the difference between red and white to review? Yeah, red is steamed, becomes more warm, becomes more qi tonifying. White is a little bit more mellow, but still strong. In Chinese medicine, is there anything more qi tonifying than this plant? That's a plant. No. This is the ultimate herb for this. We also have great, what if someone's immune system is more manifesting, like you have chronic allergies and chronic infections? Then we're going to use maybe also astragalus as a great qi tonic. A wonderful adrenal herb that's especially suited for people that have weak immunity, especially like cancer, when chemotherapy and radiation tears someone down. These are like some of the things we do to like protect them, right? Remember, Chinese ginseng would be on that adrenal scale from 1. Do you want to do the adrenal scale on top of this? Depending on the quality, you're talking about an 8 out of 10 for energy. Remember, this is my personal scale, meaning when you give this to a patient, what should you see? So with Chinese ginseng, we get concerned about it doing what? Maybe making someone overheated or like overstimulated, like kind of shaky, jittery, caffeinated like. Another symptom we might see is like the heart might palpitate. if we did a lot of it, it could elevate someone's blood pressure a little bit. Okay. Astragalus root, not super energizing, right? About a 5 out of 10. But you get some amazing immune benefits out of it. Remember, for chronic low-grade infections and viruses like Epstein-Barr virus and herpes and all these other chronic viruses we have, this is the one of the best. The other classic chi tonic is going to be a licorice root. Right? About a 6, 7, I'd say about a 7 out of 10. Licorice root is one of our most pure adrenal herbs. As far as like actually scientifically saying the most adrenal stimulating herb, this is probably the one that has the most research behind it. In fact, licorice is used a lot in researching the adrenal glands even. It's that effective at like stimulating different parts of the adrenals. The only challenge with it is that it can really elevate blood pressure in some people, so we can't always use it.
How soon would you see that?
Couple weeks, probably, yeah. Not everybody, but some people. That's the main challenge with it. Another one that fits here that's a beautiful herb, kind of rounds out this category, is Eleuthero Root, coming in at about a 6 to 7 out of 10. Remember, Eleuthero also used to be called Siberian ginseng. Probably the best, safest, strongest adaptogen we can give somebody. What do we mean by that? Meaning, maybe we have somebody because they're sensitive or have blood pressure, or maybe somebody just comes to us and they're on a bunch of medications and we just want to be like really safe. Eleuthero is what we call the litmus test for chi deficiency adrenals. Meaning, if your adrenals are fatigued, we're going to give you probably Eleuthero to just see how bad is it really. You know, if you take Eleuthero, especially like the one concentrated one we have is super crazy concentrated. Or you can do like a tincture of it or other concentrates of it. You know, if you don't feel some energy improvement in a month in your adrenals, it's kind of like a test. Remember, Eleuthero does not affect blood pressure, doesn't interact with medications. We're safe across the board. So this is kind of like the strongest thing we can probably throw at someone and still be completely safe. As a little quick reminder, what if somebody's doing a lot of caffeine? Do we get, if they're doing caffeine and they're saying like, hey, I drink a cup or 2 of coffee or 3 a day, but I don't feel heart palpitations from it. I don't feel jittery from my coffee. Is ginseng going to make them feel jittery? No. So that's like another way, like when you're trying to feel patients out or family or friends, is that if people are doing a lot of caffeine and you're not getting like that stimulated effect, ginseng's not going to do it either. I tried to tell a patient this yesterday, they couldn't process this. As your adrenals restore and your energy comes back, you will become more sensitive to coffee and start reacting like getting jittery from it. That's one way we know that people have restored their adrenals, because they now can't have 3 cups of coffee, or they can't have coffee before bed. And this guy looked at me like, well, that doesn't sound good. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, you've restored, so you're now actually feeling the sensitivity. You're feeling coffee like you should normally feel it, right? You know, if we grab somebody out of the Aboriginal rainforest that's never interacted with American world, like and gave them coffee, they're gonna be like super jittery, right? So Eleuthero is just that herb that's like so strong, but it never overdoes it. And if people take Eleuthero for a month or two and they're not seeing improvements, then you really got to get like pretty deep thinking about what we're going to do. Or maybe it's just not related to this, it's some other aspect of the adrenals, right? Okay. American ginseng would be okay here, but it lives even better in a different category for discussion. Okay. Okay. Everybody's okay with this. When people do chemotherapy and radiation, what's our statement of fact about the chi? Above all else, protect the chi, protect the righteous chi. So whether you're doing chemo or radiation or marathon training, whatever we do, we're always making sure we protect your energy. Okay. Can we geek out on Chinese ginseng and go to like extreme levels and extreme like intensity? Yeah, so you get what you pay for with some of these. The one Eleuthero capsule we have is like it's a 5-to-1 concentrate, and I don't know how they make this thing or where they're getting the Eleuthero from. It's definitely got to be a super high elevation because that thing like blasts people out of the water usually. So, okay. Okay, we're going to make it on time, right? Okay, next one. We talked about this a little bit recently. Blood deficiency. This one's really easy to assess, right? Symptoms. What do we got? Fatigue for sure. Yeah, all these would have fatigue as a major symptom, right? What about women? When is this worse? During or after menstruation, because you're losing all that blood, right? So it's going to be worse at those times. We're going to see a lot of, because remember, your blood nurtures your hair, skin, and nails. So this we're going to see assessment-wise pale fingernails, white, right? The face and skin is going to be super pale. So we have nails, we have face. Hair is going to be like what with blood deficiency? Dry, thinning, and falling out. And when people get anemia, this is what happens eventually, right? Your hair starts to fall out. Okay. Skin is also going to be what? Also very dry and just, it'll look aging. It just won't look healthy. And it'll also be very pale skin. The whole body will be pale. The tongue is about as easy as 1, 2, 3 to identify. The shape will be normal, but what's it going to look like? Pale. It's just going to be pale and it's really easy to spot. There's no other traits. That's just so definitive. The tongue is going to be super pale. Okay. Okay. All right. What are our main blood tonics that, here's the trick, that affect the adrenals, though? What do we got? Number one herb, one of the second or third most adrenal research plants on the earth is Romania Root. It's kind of like the basis for most Chinese adrenal formulas. We talked about this a little bit. It looks like wine when you make this. It's very blood rich and blood enhancing. This is one of the main blood tonics. It's also one of the main adrenal tonics. This herb has been researched a lot to reverse the effects of steroids on the adrenals. So if people have to take steroids because maybe they have an autoimmune condition or some kind of cancer where you would get steroids every day, or they have to take steroids for some other use, we're going to give people Romania Root to try to reduce the damage. But it is a huge blood tonic. This people also tend to feel what? Very cold. So when your blood gets weak, you get really cold. You also tend to see black spots or floaters. And you also tend to be dizzy a lot. So anemia would just be a more extreme version of this, right? Okay. What's the one challenge of using Romania? If you remember? Remember? Because it's so blood building and so rich, it can make people really bloated. Like feel really full and kind of bloated. So we often will combine it with some kind of a digestive herb a little bit, right? Like ginger or just something really simple, just so people don't get so bloated from it. Okay. The Chinese formulas are so balanced that doesn't happen a lot, but I mean, occasionally you'll see someone who's just got a real kind of weak digestion and can get bloated still, but less common with the formulas. But by itself, definitely, yeah. Okay. So this would all, is this good for actual anemia? Yeah, it's also good for actual anemia too, like iron anemia. Another herb we talked about that a lot of people don't think of about for their adrenals would be the quai root. Oh, we forgot. Romania, 5 out of 10 on the adrenal scale. Quai, 4 out of 10. Okay. So quai root is one of our main adrenal tonics for weak blood. This is also going to be good for poor circulation, good for both feeling cold from weak blood, but remember also women that are menopausal and perimenopausal often have weak blood. And that herb is also good for the hot flashes of menopause and perimenopause and postmenopause. We also love quai because remember, it breaks open all blockages in the pelvis for women and men too. So for any kind of ovary, uterine, gynecology situation, we love quai. One of the best circulation herbs out there. Okay. There's other ones, but they probably live better somewhere else. Can anybody think of another adaptogen blood tonic we're not thinking of? These are like the two major ones. Oh, one more. The one we don't use a lot, but we use in emergencies. Deer antler velvet. 9 out of 10. Right? Before we had blood transfusions, this is what they did in old days in Asia. If your blood was so weak and you needed a blood transfusion, you would get like constant decoction or infusion or tea or tincture of deer antler velvet. Really, really good for people with severe anemia and blood deficiency. And this is also another good test. Like when you've exhausted all the adaptogens and for some reason it's just still not working, sometimes we'll reach for this one. I don't use it a lot. There's only one company I use. We looked at it last year, right? It's the Planetary Formulas one. It's from Ethically Harvested Antler Velvet. They just shed it, right? So they're not like cutting their horns off or anything. You can harvest this locally if you really wanted to. You can get some local deer antler velvet, but no, sanitary it is. I don't know how they do the sanitation part of it, but in theory. Now this is the velvet though, because the velvet is the growth, right? Where all the active growth compounds are at. Okay. That is the most extreme, one of the most extreme adrenal tonics that we have. 9 out of 10. As strong as this is, it does not elevate blood pressure though, like ginseng can sometimes. So even though it's more extreme, it still doesn't like affect blood pressure, but you can definitely get like jittery and like intense from it. Yeah. I was once in Chinatown in San Francisco, and I took about like 3 shots of deer antler velvet, like little ampule things, like shots of it, and just like shaky, and it felt so good. Like, yeah. It's the pre-workout that like all the bodybuilders should be doing instead of like the stimulant type stuff, you know, like some of that stuff they do. Okay. Next one was, let's do Jing. Okay, you have Jing deficiency. Ooh, how do we identify this? You ready? You got really bad ancestry. Sorry. You just, you're talking to someone, you're like, yeah, just my whole family tree is everybody's unhealthy. Okay. That's one way we identify this. We also just say we could, in modern times, we say you got really bad genetics. You got like kind of got the shaft. Okay. Or whenever someone says they're born prematurely, this absolutely is always in existence. We just instantly know it's one of those 100%.
So if they're born prematurely, does that mean that it's something like they might have to do this particular treatment a few times in their life type of thing? Like when stress comes, they might need to do it again.
They usually have to do it very long because your Jing is not fully developed until you're ready to be born. So they just like got cut off from the cycle. Yeah. So you can still build it like we talked about on your own. It just takes time. But if you were born premature, and the more premature and the more, health complications infants had right after delivery, like if you had to be in like the NICU for like months, then you really, this might be something that takes years to correct, even when you're older. So this is one of the main weird questions that we ask in natural medicine that Western medicine doesn't really get too concerned about. How else do we know your Jing is really weak? Besides fatigue.
She like gets sick all the time, catch every one.
Sick a lot. Yeah, this is like a pretty extreme fatigue. A lot of patients will use the word, I'm fatigued all the way down to my bones. And a lot of people have achiness in their bones because remember, Jing controls your bones. So another way we know people have this, guess what? We see this with kids a lot. You have severe dental cavities as a child or adult, where your teeth are falling out, teeth are rotting. Some of it can be dental, but when it's just like I saw a lady the other day, like the extreme healthy family, been to the dentist every 6 months, the kid's life, like 10 cavities right now. And has to have all the 4 front teeth pulled out, like complete organic family. And the mother's like distraught and it's just, trying to talk to her about this.
Somebody was in vitro.
Yeah, in vitro. Yeah, if you were born in vitro, definitely this, because you don't really get the Jing that way. That's the challenge with it, unfortunately. So in vitro babies would fall into this category. Okay. So we know because you're very prone to osteoporosis, broken bones, cavities, tooth decay, even at a young age, especially. We also see a lot of hair loss with this, a lot of balding patterns and extreme hair loss. But it's often what they call a bone tiredness. It's tiredness all the way, literally to your bones, because that's where your jing is. Makes sense. Okay. Also, typically infertility has a big factor with jing, men or women, either one. Also low libido, low sexual function. This is like a major symptom of that too. Those are the main ones. Low libido, low sexual function. Okay. What we don't really notice this in the tongue. There's not a clear tongue indicator. When we do the pulse, there is a 100% accurate pulse trait to know how low this is. I don't know that we have the time to do it right now, but when we do the pulse, we'll do this. You can just feel this or not, really easy. It doesn't take any skill to do it. You just have to know where to look. Okay. There's something else. Okay. What are the herbs? Remember, there's not a lot of herbs that do this. We talked about this last year. There's very few herbs that we know historically that can actually interact with this. What is the one or two herbs? So Hoshu Wu, this is why the herb is so special. Surprisingly, only about a 4 out of 10, maybe 5 out of 10. Not super energizing. You would think Hoshu Wu would be extreme. The reason why you don't feel like ginseng from Hoshu Wu is because it just takes a long time to rebuild this part of the body. So you just don't notice it very much right away. I've experienced, and I'm told also that even, the older the Hoshu Wu, the stronger it is. I've had really good Hoshu Wu before. I think was like 10, maybe 20 years old, but you can go up to 100 years old, like ginseng. And they say like if you eat one of those roots, you have like complete rejuvenation instantly. My one teacher, Master Chen, was able to partake of that once. So like in Asia, you just don't see this in America. What we get here is very low quality. Even the good quality is still not like really old and really special. So someday I'll retrack us down. Maybe remind me of that next week. We'll try to retrack down some really old Hoshu Wu to have like for a class at our graduation party or something. So we can all feel it. Yeah. You can actually, when I had it, like your whole body gets shaky. Like your kidneys even like vibrate for a couple days. They just like kind of shake, like zzz. Feels really good though. Super good. It's dried. Yeah, it's dried. Yeah. There's a couple other Chinese herbs we haven't talked about that do this, but this is the main one. Some people say that the deer antler velvet that we talked about just before this can tonify the jing a little bit because it's kind of like the jing of the animal. Just remember, bones, hair, horns are all related to jing. And we talked about cordyceps too, may tonify the jing a little bit. But nothing does it like Hoshu Wu. Another common food that's really popular in America that may rejuvenate the jing a little bit. This is why lychee berry or goji berry is so popular in Asia. because it can rejuvenate the jing, maybe a little bit, but nothing like Hoshu. Gymnostemma, we talked about last week, or Jiaogulan. Probably does this a little bit, we thought. There's writings that it does a little bit. This is also considered where you go for more extreme anti-aging support. Like you really want to try to consciously reverse the aging process, you would go to try to work with this part of your body. So these herbs are often used a lot in geriatric and elderly medicine in Asia still today. They're thought of as having like a really rejuvenating kind of anti-aging effect. Okay. So osteoporosis would be a symptom of this, early onset osteoporosis. When women have this, what's it called? Premature ovarian syndrome, premature osteoporosis, we know it's the jing. You just instantly know it's the jing. Yeah, when children have weird bone growth disorders, or often with, I've seen a couple of children that were way below growth charts and they were on the edge of the endocrinologist was going to maybe do growth hormone if they didn't grow within the next like 6 to 12 months. I've seen, I think, 3 kids now that were way off the charts, low height, that Jing tonics really resolved it. They never had to do hormones or anything. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah. I feel like ashwagandha probably does this a little bit from Ayurvedic medicine too. So these herbs are kind of special, especially the Hoshu. We'll try to geek out with some really good Hoshu. I don't want to say it. I won't say it. It's a funny thing, but it's kind of true. Just don't want to say it. Do you want to know it? I feel like we're all, I guess. I don't know how to say this. How do you say this like appropriately? No, I mean, it's not like that bad. I just don't know how to say it tactfully. They say when you restore your jing, you know, because you start to feel like you're young again, like all your hormones start to flush through your body, like an adolescent. It's like men and women will feel, you know, like really like libido flushes and things like that you would have like during like high school years. But they say really good Hoshu Wu, you know, because for men and women both, like the genitals, the ovaries, the testicles will develop like a buzzy feeling. That often is true, and a lot of people have validated that. It's just a sign that it's like really like rejuvenating that part of the body. So I don't know how else to say it, but it's like experiential. So if you're ever in Asia or something, you're at a place, every restaurant and shop, every herb shop in Asia and China has a secret Hoshu Wu thing. I think I told you about that, didn't I? My friends, did I tell you that story? We were on this mountain, we had Yellow Mountain in this remote village. It was a Buddhist village, so they had no alcohol. We're out late at night, eating at this restaurant, because in Asia, like people just eat all night long, like even in small towns, stop, and people think like everything shuts down in the mountainside, but just most cultures are up really late. And a spot behind the counter, this huge, I spot the tonic jar. Like a lot of pharmacies and people and businesses and restaurants in Asia have like their rejuvenation elixir. It's this huge jar. I can see like deer antler and ginseng roots and everything in it. I'm just like, it didn't, the translator wasn't there. I was like, that want that. And they're like, no. Like, that. And finally, I think a translator came. They thought we were weird too. The translators, like, you don't want that stuff. Americans, like, they didn't even really understand it. They were younger generation. I'm like, no, I want that. So this guy finally brings out this jug and sits us down, charges us about the equivalent of like 10 cents a shot. I mean, I had like 20 shots that night. There was this couple that was with us, this married couple from Texas that were doing like this abstinence wedding marriage thing, like to redo their just relationship and vows. And they were doing like this Tai Chi practice, and they all drank it that night. And they came downstairs in the morning. They were both like laughing and smiling. Everyone's like, oh, the gin tonic got to them. So yeah, but it was, I mean, everybody I went to bed, like my kidneys are like buzzing all night. I didn't sleep, but I just woke up like feeling amazing. And like everybody that was there was like, this is the most amazing I've ever felt in my life. Everybody had about 10 to 20 little 1 ounce little shots of this tonic elixir. I don't know what was in it. You know, everybody has their own special formula. It was just amazing. But the mountain we were on has a type of Hoshu Wu that I think we mentioned, called Huangjing, which is often called like yellow Hoshu Wu. It's eaten in Asia. When we were at this restaurant on Yellow Mountain, and they brought lunch out, and everything's served family style in China. And there was this plate. I'm like, what is this? And they kept saying like, Huangjing. And I'm like, this is Huangjing? It was like fresh Huangjing, like fried, looked like scalloped potatoes. It was just like stir-fried Huangjing, like 5 pounds of it. No one wanted to eat it in our whole thing. I ate like the entire plate. I really did. Like, I was like amazing. I just couldn't believe I was getting like free Huangjing. But this mountain is famous for this. Actually, this is called Buddhist, like mummy mountain is the translation or something, because all the monks that live there, they consume this daily. And when a lot of them die, their body doesn't age. So they're just like preserved. So they're called like, there's some Chinese name like Buddhist mummy, and they're all on display and stuff because their bodies are so anti-aging. Like when they die, they don't decay. They just look like they're like you were embalmed or something, but they're not. They're just what happens. So when they die on this mountain, they wait a couple months and see like how much people age before they cremate them. If they don't age, they just kind of weird. They just put them on display. I don't know what they do with all of them, but it's kind of weird. Respect, yeah. So, but this herb is not very common in America, but I use it sometime. You want to break out the Huangjing? We have it in a powder. Get a little scooper out. If we have a Hoshu Wu reserve back there, or maybe we can make it next week. I know I got all kinds of stash somewhere back there. So this is another Jing tonic. See, a lot of these herbs in Chinese medicine, their name tells you what they do, right? So Huang means yellow or of the earth. So earth Jing or yellow Jing. So very cool. One other popular herb that's kind of popular because of Lyme's disease is the Japanese knotweed. I haven't really talked about it a lot. This is one of the also Jing plants historically in Chinese medicine too, that's used a lot for Lyme's disease. So to me, like when I saw modern people writing about this in America for Lyme's disease, I'm like, that makes total sense. But it's anti-inflammatory, but it's also a weed in America. So Japanese knotweed. Okay. Okay. Ready? Let's go to kidney yin deficiency. Okay. What does this look like? We're gonna have fatigue. Now we're really getting keyed in on the kidneys. So we're gonna have like lower backache, weak back, right? Sciatic nerve pains, lower backaches. Gonna pee all the time, pee at night a lot, urinate at night. Hot flashes, especially at night. When you have this, your fatigue and your hot flashes are all worse at night because it's a yin pattern. It's a moon pattern, right? But the main symptom is going to be dryness. Everything's going to feel dry. Mouth will be dry. This is the person who can drink all the fluids and still feel thirsty all the time, never get hydrated. So everything else will kind of be dry. But in general, this is more like a classic kind of adrenal fatigue pattern from like a Western perspective, because it's just like a chronic, slow moving thing that develops over time. So excessive sweating can trigger this. You know, we see this a lot in people who work out excessively and like sweat all the time, or marathoners. Oh, do we got some? Oh, you got that? Yeah. Let's brew this next week. We'll brew one little chunk. We'll leave it out. It's fine. I'll find some even better. At home, I've got a mixture somewhere. What is the tongue going to look like? This is easy to spot, remember? Yep. So when we have yin deficiency, when we have dryness, we get a crack. It's going to start where usually with the adrenals, it's going to start in the back, right? And then eventually it could move into the stomach area. It can move all the way into the lung area or the heart. What about when the crack goes all the way? This is absolutely always true. What does this mean? It does not mean you're going to die. No, it looks like it probably would. This means the best way I can translate this is you have complete parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system disruption, and like true adrenal fatigue syndrome as we think of it in the West. Your adrenals are depleted, you're wired, tired, fried. And this means your nervous system is involved in it now. Remember when we talked about the adrenals, we said the worse your stress gets, the more depleted your adrenals get. And likewise, the more fatigued your adrenals get, the more reactive you get to stress. It's like a vicious cycle. This is showing that. In Western herbalism, we would just call this a dry pattern, a dry constitution. You're dried out. You're fried and dried. It's the equivalent of looking at like a drought soil. You have all the deep cracking when the soil becomes drought stricken like we have right now, the soil cracks and gets dried, right? So same with your tongue. We can have other cracks going this way, but the main one is through the center. Okay. Hey, what are our main kidney yin herbs? One we already talked about, but in Chinese medicine, this is like considered the supreme. More complicated pulse could be happening with this, but the tongue, 100% spot on. Yeah. So Romania root that we talked about before is considered one of the main herbs for this. The herb we love for this, that is my favorite, is American ginseng root. Remember, it's cooling. Because remember, the drier you get, the hotter you get, because moisture is what cools your body. So this is why it's kind of counterintuitive. As we get drier, we get hotter. This is why people have more severe hot flashes the drier you are. The more yin deficient you are, the more severe your hot flashes during menopause or perimenopause or postmenopause. A little trick of the trade, if you've had your ovaries removed, you have yin deficiency, because that's where the yin comes from for most women, is from the ovaries. So if you had them removed, you're prone to having this the rest of your life. The uterus doesn't really do that much with that. This would be the ovaries.
So you just have to basically probably be on American Idol for the rest of your life.
Long time. Yep. So American ginseng, we said, is probably about a 5 out of, maybe if we get really good ginseng again, maybe a 6, but about a 5 out of 10. But it has more of the restorative effect on the nervous system, right? The other adaptogen that we love here, one of our all-time favorites, is the schizandra berry. Only about a 5 out of 10, but boy, when you have somebody that needs schizandra, it's awesome. Schizandra is good, we said, for people who are sweating excessively. Super sweaty people. Sweat easily, excessive sweating. We also talked about how this is one of the main herbs for like chronic asthma and allergies, kidney function. All of these herbs in this category are the ones we had talked about for actual kidney disease too. Like if you're on dialysis or you have kidney disease, these are the main herbs that have also been shown to help restore some kidney function. Okay, so schizandra, we talked about, is also really good for like Alzheimer's, dementia, memory, and focus. But it's very good when we see this. The other herb that's good here that is more of like a food in America is the lychee berry or goji berry. 3 out of 10, not really much energizing, but it does restore the adrenals. You just don't get like a huge energy zap from it, but really healthy for sure. Okay. I feel like there's another one we're missing here. Another one? Okay. Okay. We can also, combining these with seaweeds is an awesome combination. Yeah. So if we had combined any of these herbs with like bladderwrack or kelp or dulse, it will work better for sure. Yep, that's a great point. Plus, remember, in Chinese medicine, the taste of the kidney is what flavor? Salty. So by adding that salty flavor of a seaweed, it really is like a catalyst for the kidneys. Okay, last one. You don't have to, but like in theory, it'd probably work a little stronger to take them at the same time. But you don't necessarily have to. Okay, so we got kidney yang deficiency. This is kind of like the adrenal fatigue syndrome, like fatigues. This is like extreme fatigue. And you are cold. There is no doubt about it. And you are very like kind of like depressed, like very flat affect, because you just have no heat. You have no yang in your body. So we're going to have, with this one, we have a lot of more so hypo-functioning organs, right? Like low thyroid, low adrenal function, low testosterone, low estrogen, low everything. DHEA is low, everything's low. Okay. What's the tongue going to look like? This one's not as clear, but what's it going to look like? The tongue's going to be just kind of generally enlarged, but no scallops. It's going to be pale. It's going to be very like wet or damp usually. The opposite of dry, right? We have no heat. Okay. What are some of our main kidney yang herbs that are warming and heating? Just to reiterate this again, antler velvet again fits this category. Epimedium, or what we call the horny goat weed, was one of the main herbs here, right? The medium herb, about a 7 out of 10 for energy. A little bit stronger for the adrenals and energy. Obviously, its name implies that this is also really good for low libido. But this is really our main herb for low testosterone in men or women both also. Quite a bit of research to support that. We use a lot of really strong herbs historically in Chinese medicine here that are potentially toxic, like aconite and that. So epimedium is the most gentle of the common ones. And then cordyceps mushroom is really, really good here. Depending again on the grade of cordyceps, could be like a 5 to 7, depending on the grade. Most of the cordyceps we're using in America is all grown in greenhouses. It's not quite as energizing as like the wild, but the wild is like now thousands of dollars a pound too. So maybe next week we'll do a little wild cordyceps. I'm gonna break out my secret tin of cordyceps from Tibet, wild cordyceps. Yeah. Cordyceps I bought $1,000 an ounce, but I bought like 6 grams. You could buy it by the gram, which is like not very much, but it's something, right? Save that for a special occasion. Maybe we'll have some kind of party next week or something. So cordyceps. But in Chinese medicine, we do use a lot of herbs here. We just don't use them in America. They're not very common. They're things we don't really use or talk about much in America. So with this, people are going to be like really fatigued, depressed, cold. Just it's pretty easy to spot, right? These herbs tend to be more like heating, energizing, kind of invigorating. Okay. You notice there's a couple of adaptogens that we left out that don't necessarily fit in any of these categories. Let's talk about those to finish up the main ones. Okay. Let's just call this miscellaneous, meaning these herbs do fall into categories, but to me, they don't really totally fit any one category. The first one being ashwagandha root. So ashwagandha, its main unique trait is what? It's energizing and calming at the same time. It's one of the great herbs we can always give if people have really bad anxiety too. We never have to worry about it being too stimulating. We said the classic example was the wired and tired, right? You're exhausted. I was listening to somebody on a podcast the other day saying, it's exhausted, but I lay down and I can't go to sleep. You're just wired. Your brain won't shut off. That's kind of ashwagandha. You're just fried. You're super tired, but your whole sleep cycle's disrupted. Right. So it balances the nervous system and the adrenals both. Very cool herb. Probably best lives in the Jing category in my mind. Okay. Another one that we've talked about that is one of my all-time favorite adaptogens, rhodiola. In Chinese medicine, this would be like a qi tonic. Sometimes it's considered a yin tonic. 6 to 7 out of 10. Like Eleuthero, this is just one of the, Eleuthero and rhodiola are both strong enough to feel the energy. And if you don't feel rhodiola after like a month or two from a good rhodiola, that's a concerning sign with the adrenals, right? These are like Eleuthero and rhodiola are really good tests to just see how fried are someone's adrenals, how depleted are people. Because no matter what your constitution, rhodiola will help about any constitution. And it's fairly energizing, feel it fairly quick. We want to try to get rhodiola, ideally that's growing from like Siberia or permafrost, like Alaska. Why? Why does that make sense to us as herbalists? This is a plant saying like, crap, I'm gonna die. Energy into my roots, massive amounts of rosvarin and all these other compounds. Right? Antifreeze, live, survive, like thrive, right? It's trying to live. So it has to secrete a chemistry that is extreme to live in these really cold climates. So the Gaia rhodiola we do used to be guaranteed it was from Siberia. I don't know if it still is for sure, but that thing is crazy. That's like my all-time favorite rhodiola. We used to be able to get from this one Chinese company Tibetan rhodiola, which was even better. When you took it, it was extreme. But the Gaia one is the best one that I've ever found consistently. That's a commercial company. It's a very amazing rhodiola. But if you just want energy and vitality, we said the cool thing, rhodiola has that, remember its name is Arctic rose. So it has those rose-like smells and flavors. It actually has a very heart calming effect. It mixes really well with things like linden and hawthorn. It's just one of the most researched adaptogens too. This is the one we use a lot when people have depression with fatigue too, because it has those rose-like mood uplifting properties for depression. Okay. Another adaptogen that we don't use a lot in this part of America, but it's used a lot on the West Coast. It does grow in Nebraska, is spikenard root. Not super strong, probably fits more into the yin tonic category because it's moisturizing. But spikenard is unique because it's related to ginsengs and it's energizing and adaptogenic. But spikenard targets two things, the lungs. So we use this a lot in people who are recovering from like serious lung diseases and literally have weak lungs, like you're trying to get over pneumonia, COVID, bronchitis, something like that. You've been in the hospital and you've been intubated or had like tubes out of you, right? We're going to probably give you something like this afterwards to help you recover. But it's also deeply rejuvenating to the ovaries. So it's used a lot for infertility. It's used a lot for ovarian uterine problems. It's considered more specific for women that have a lot of infertility issues that need an adaptogen. One of my teachers used it a lot in midwifery. I don't really use it that way. I don't know enough about its safety, but it's historically used in midwifery. It grows up by Ponca, and Fontenelle Forest has it growing. So it does grow here. It's really cool. It's like a shrub, a shade-loving shrub. I used to have it at my house in the country. It loved the shade. It's a really cool plant. But a lot of the California West Coast herbalists use this a lot. Not related to the spikenard that Moses anointed people with. That's a different nard that we talked about, as not related to this at all. Okay. Any other adaptogens that are really common that we miss? Oh, the Jiao Gulan, which we talked about quite a bit 2 weeks ago, right? Jiao Gulan kind of fits in this category. It's kind of like rhodiola. It's just kind of, it could be in a lot of categories. Like rhodiola, it's very energizing, but it also never overstimulates. Never seen it overstimulate anybody ever. So these are the other adaptogens that are key. Let me look at my list to make sure we got like 2 minutes, perfect timing. That was a pretty good test there. Oh yeah, one more we forgot. Devil's Club. What is Prairie Star? What did I asked them to change their Devil's Club a couple years ago or research it. What did they do recently? Different? Something about a ratio. Okay, whatever the heck you did last time is all of a sudden working like it's supposed to. It never worked before. Okay. It's a really good batch. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So Devil's Club root is a Pacific Northwest herb. All the way it grows from like, I don't know Oregon, but definitely Washington, all the way up through Alaska. When you watch Alaska shows, this is the one they're bushwhacking through, like bleeding all over because it's just like got huge spikes on it. It's really crazy and intense, really strong. We use the root or root bark, or sometimes the bark. And boy, whatever Prairie Star did to it last time, it's finally working like I've always heard it is good for. So number one, this is not super energizing, just about a 5 out of 10. But this adaptogen is unique, maybe not unique. It's really good for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. People, if you're on insulin or type 2 diabetic blood medications like, what's the medication? Metformin or something. Yeah, metformin. This combines really well with that. So it's good for type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and diabetes. But it is really remarkably great for all types of joint pains, including like Lyme's joint pains and other viruses and infections that cause joint pains. And it's really good for joint flexibility also. And it's really good for fibromyalgia aches or pains. It's just really good for aches and pains. Works different than how willow bark or some of those things would work. We said American ginseng was also good for like diabetes and pre-diabetes. Chinese ginseng is also one of the main diabetic, pre-diabetic herbs, type 2 diabetes. So it's not unique for blood sugar, but it is, not a lot of them do that specifically. But it's also lately I've been just using it a lot for chronic joint pains and fibromyalgia pains when people need an adaptogen, but they also have a lot of joint pains as a result of the fatigue or other problem that they have. So it's a really good one to not forget. There's the one. You want to do one more, like 1 second on it? One we forgot since we're here. This would live in the blood deficiency, clearly. That is maca root. This is from Peru, the Andes Mountains. This is one of the legendary foods of the people who are native to the Andes areas. This is still their traditional food. We have to be mindful of that, right? Maca root is a major blood and anemia tonic for both men and women, not just women. It's also great for menopause and hormonal cycle irregularities with women. It's renowned for being good for libido for men and women. How it's used mostly in South America. It's energizing without being too energizing. It's often sold as like a powder that people just throw in your shakes. So realize when you do that, doing powdered herbs like into smoothies and stuff is a great way to get like a massive dose. Like a tablespoon of maca is like taking, depending on the company, like 4 to 6 capsules at once. So, I mean, a lot of these people that are doing maca shakes, it's really cool. It's a great idea. But you're just getting like a really big dose, quite big dose all at once. So, okay. Maca. Legendary for libido for men and women, probably more so women than men. Doesn't interact with anything that I know of right now. We just have to be sensitive because these are like, there's a weird Chinese story about this, how these Chinese business people went into Peru and basically bought the market out in one day before the whole world could figure out what happened. This happened, I think, about 3 years ago. So maca prices went like whoosh, and nobody could get it for a while. I think that's resolved now, but yeah, these just, when something gets popular, the big money comes into the world and they go into like coconuts, right? Like the coconut prices, because of coconut water and stuff being so popular in America, have driven up prices, and countries that live on coconuts that often people can't afford it. So like as American consumers, we just got to be aware of this. So maca root. Last one, we're done. We made it. Yeah.
What about children that early onset diabetes?
That's safe for children, and yeah, safe for children too. Yeah. Yep. We have not talked about, I was supposed to do that this weekend. I did get a couple of emails sent out, but I didn't do the advanced class. Yeah, it's going to start right after this one. I'm writing up a syllabus on it. So it's going to move to Thursday night.
Every other Thursday and one Saturday.
Yeah, probably one Saturday. Yeah. It's a reduced price because we're in class less and all that too. Yeah. It's just for 6 months. And the end part of it includes like a student clinic where we're all seeing like patients together and kind of helping them out. So you'll learn to do like we'll talk about it. You learn to do an actual assessment and how to work people through that. Yeah.